Hello, my name is Elira, and the morning I lost everything didn't start with a goodbye. It started with my own family looking me in the eye and deciding I was disposable. One minute, I was carrying the merger binder I'd protected for years. The next, my aunt, my father's golden child, snapped, "Do you even know how this company works?" and shoved it into my chest. "You're fired!" Minutes later, in the lobby, the executive for a $9.8 billion deal held out his hand and asked, "Ready to sign?" I swallowed my shame and said, "I can't. She just fired me. The deal's dead." And that's when he turned to her and whispered, "You did what?" Before we go any further, what time is it where you're listening from right now? And where are you in the world? Tell me in the comments. Because what happened next didn't just destroy a deal. It exposed a betrayal that had been building inside my family for decades. The glass doors of Ravenshore Industries slid open with a soft hiss, and I stepped into the lobby like I had thousands of times before. Polished stone floors, steel columns, the faint scent of coffee and cleaning solution mixed together. Everything looked the same, yet something in the air felt unsettled, the kind of quiet that settles in just before a storm. My access badge hung from the clip on my blouse, tapping lightly against my ribs as I walked. I had adjusted those merger binders myself at the kitchen table before sunrise, reviewing numbers while the city was still asleep. The $9.8 billion deal was finally reaching its last stretch. I had lived inside its details for months, often without my name ever appearing in the room. A few coworkers nodded as I passed, polite smiles, averted eyes. That was when I saw her. Vesper Hale stood near the conference corridor, sharp suit, perfect hair, posture like she owned the building already. My aunt, newly promoted, newly powerful. Her gaze met mine for half a second, then slid away as if I were a piece of furniture. The pressure in my chest grew tight without warning. I reached the double doors to the strategy wing when her heels clicked fast behind me. "Elira," she said, loud enough for nearby staff to hear. "The binder." I turned and held it out. She did not take it immediately. Instead, she looked me up and down and asked, "Do you even know how this company works?" There was a ripple of stillness around us. My face warmed instantly. I had been with this firm since before her appointment. I built models executives presented as their own. I stayed late when others went home. I kept quiet because that was how I was raised. I prepared the final financial revisions myself, I said evenly. She gave a thin smile and shoved the binder into my chest with enough force to make the papers bend. "You prepared something you were never asked to touch." The sting wasn't physical. It came from somewhere older. In the corridor outside the conference rooms, she pivoted sharply and announced, "You're fired!" The word rang too loudly. Someone near the coffee station whispered, "She can't do that, can she?" My pulse thudded in my ears. No meeting, no warning, no reason. I stood rooted to the carpet while the room adjusted to the shock of it. A security officer hesitated before stepping forward. He looked uncomfortable, almost apologetic. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll need your badge." My fingers trembled as I unclipped it. The small plastic square caught the light as it left my hand. It should not have weighed that much, but it did. Losing it felt like being erased from my own family's company. I placed it into his palm and said nothing. Minutes later, I stood in the main lobby holding a small cardboard box with my notepad, phone charger, framed photo of my mother, and the pen I'd used on nearly every contract I ever touched. The revolving door turned. Voices approached. "Elira," a man said brightly. "Ready to finalize?" The executive for the merger extended his hand, confident, expectant. I met his eyes and answered quietly, "I can't. She just fired me. The deal's dead." His smile vanished. He looked past me toward the hallway where Vesper stood frozen in place. You did what? He demanded. The words rang through the lobby like a dropped plate. I walked out into the warm Houston morning, box tucked against my ribs, chest tight with something deeper than shock. The dismissal hurt, but what hurt more was knowing it did not come from a stranger. It came from family, and family was supposed to know what I was worth. I walked toward the parking garage, still hearing his words echoing inside. You did what? As I stepped onto the second level of the parking garage, the warmth of the Houston morning clung to my skin, thick and damp. My heels echoed in the empty concrete space, box still tucked under my arm. I wasn't walking fast, just moving forward because standing still felt worse. My phone buzzed in my purse, once, twice, then again. I reached in, expecting a flood of messages from friends who'd heard, but it wasn't that. Unknown numbers, internal extensions from the company. The screen lit up with a missed call from accounting, followed by 2 from lines I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. I was afraid the voice on the other end would be hers, Vesper's, telling me not to talk, not to fight, to just let it go for the good of the family name. I imagined her voice, syrupy and sharp. Don't make it messy, Elira. Be smart for once. The phone buzzed again. I finally picked up on the 3rd ring. It was Linda from finance, mid-level senior, kind, always brought in oatmeal cookies during month-end crunch. She whispered like she was calling from a church. Elira, listen, everyone's freaking out. They didn't know you were let go until just now. The merger team is spiraling. You were the only one tracking the compliance files. Legal's already raising red flags. I blinked at the street below, watching traffic move like none of this mattered. I thought I was just support, I said, more to myself. No, she said, urgent. You were the legal safeguard. No one else touched that file. You were protecting the whole deal. The line went silent. Then a sigh. Vesper told the executive board she could consolidate your work, said your systems were too fragmented, but honestly, it sounds like she just didn't want anyone questioning her version of the audit. My chest tightened. I thanked her, voice dry, and ended the call. Then it rang again, a private number. I hesitated, picked up. Elira, this is Alaric Gray, the merger executive, the one who had watched my career fall apart in 30 seconds flat. I need you to walk me through what just happened, he said, voice low, clipped. You're firing. It's not just poor timing, it's sabotage. The board is livid. They assumed your removal had been signed off. I leaned against the driver's side door of my car, not ready to sit. She didn't just remove me, I said. She rerouted everything. I don't know how far it goes. He exhaled slowly. Your aunt pushed hard to oversee your files last week. She said she could clean up the numbers and speed things along. I thought it was odd. Now I'm seeing why. I didn't reply. What could I say? That I saw it coming, but didn't think she'd gut me so publicly? Keep your head down, he said, but keep your records. This isn't over. I drove back to my condo in Midtown, silence filling the space between my thoughts. I parked, took the elevator up, and unlocked. The door with one hand while balancing the box on my hip. The quiet hit me hard. I set the box down on the kitchen island. The door clicked shut behind me, too soft for a morning that had shattered everything. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just walked into the living room and sat cross-legged on the floor, staring at the hook where my Ravenshore lanyard used to hang. There was nothing there now. My phone buzzed again. A voicemail from my father. No hello, no warmth, just, "Don't cause a scene. We'll fix this quietly. Family stays together when it matters." I stared at the wall. Not a single word about me, about the embarrassment, about the betrayal. Just silence. And then an email notification slipped through before my access got cut off. It came from an address I didn't recognize. No greeting, just, "You should know she's altering the audit trail. Don't let her bury you." Attached was a screenshot. Vesper's user credentials. Changes to the compliance ledger made just hours ago. Backdated, hidden flags, deleted entries. I forwarded it to a personal drive, labeled the file Insurance. I whispered, "She didn't just fire me, she erased me." That sentence sat heavy in the room. She wanted me invisible, forgotten, removed like a typo. But I wasn't gone yet. I saved the screenshot again, this time with a timestamp. And then, as if the universe wanted to confirm everything, another anonymous file dropped into my inbox. The new message landed with a soft chime, but it might as well have been thunder. The subject line read, "Check timestamps." No greeting, no sign-off, just a single attachment. I hesitated. My hands hovered over the trackpad, fingers cold despite the warmth in the apartment. Rain had started outside, a soft, rhythmic drizzle against the windows, muting the sharpness of the morning. I clicked the download. The document opened in a secure viewer. System logs. The kind most people didn't know existed unless they worked compliance as long as I had. I scanned line by line. It was all there. Entries made under Vesper's credentials. Edits to the compliance audit. Times, user IDs, server codes. And they weren't just edits for formatting or presentation. They were changes to the substance. One log showed her replacing a detailed disclosure I had flagged with a vague summary. Another showed entire sections removed, whole lines of reporting gone. She'd overwritten notes I'd triple-checked, replaced them with half-truths, then scheduled submission dates to match periods. I was out on bereavement leave last quarter. I backed away from the screen, breathing shallow, fingers pressed to my lips. It was clear now. She hadn't just pushed me out of the company, she was building a paper trail that would make it look like I'd been negligent. She was rewriting history, one edit at a time. This wasn't sloppiness, it was framing. I closed my eyes, chest tightening. The memories came in sharp fragments. Elementary school. Vesper had once taken my science fair poster and fixed the design the night before submission. Mine disappeared. Hers won a ribbon. College years, she offered to help with my resume, then pitched the same layout and language for her own internship. Back then, everyone said we were just two ambitious women in the same family. Now, I saw the pattern for what it was. My phone buzzed again, another email alert. But I stayed focused. I went back to the logs. There was more. Near the bottom of the file, I spotted a line item referencing a compliance meeting I never attended. The notes indicated legal concerns addressed, and the user note said, "Elira is aligned. I'll handle her piece." I had no knowledge of that meeting. I hadn't seen any invite, no agenda. She'd spoken for me, on record. That was the moment it clicked. She fired me to bury the evidence and protect herself, I said aloud, the words barely audible over the rain. I stood from the couch, muscles stiff, eyes dry but burning. This wasn't about one deal. It was about control, about her needing a version of events she could manage, and me being too thorough to ignore the red flags. Pacing across the living room, I caught sight of the wall hook by the door, the empty space where my badge once hung. For years, I'd clipped it there out of habit. Now it looked like a void, not just in plastic and metal, but in identity. I reached for my laptop, connected an external drive, and began transferring every file, every email I could still access, screenshots, call logs, even voicemail transcriptions. I named the folders clearly: timeline, compliance records, access logs. This wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. I opened a blank document and started outlining a timeline. Every edit Vesper made, every discrepancy, every action taken without my knowledge. I knew I couldn't trust my memory alone. I needed it laid out, clean and sharp, in case someone asked, in case someone had to ask. I thought about calling someone, Alaric, maybe Linda. But the truth was, I didn't know who to trust. My father wouldn't help. He'd already drawn his line. Don't make a scene. To him, silence was loyalty, and disloyalty was unforgivable. But silence wasn't protection anymore. It was complicity. I sat back in my chair, breath finally evening out. The panic was still there, under the surface, but something else had started to rise above it: clarity. Losing my badge didn't mean I lost my value. She could try to erase me, but the files said otherwise. I clicked save. The external drive whirred quietly. And then the next message arrived. This one, not anonymous. Alaric's name lit up my screen, sharp against the dim background of my laptop. I didn't hesitate this time. I clicked to answer before I could second-guess myself. "Elira," he said, his voice low and deliberate. Not cold, not exactly warm, controlled. The kind of tone that makes you sit up straighter without even realizing it. "I assume you've seen what came through," he said. "I have," I replied, glancing at the external drive still connected to my laptop. My fingers were still tight around my coffee mug, long since gone cold. The board wants answers. The merger's risk profile shifted overnight, and they want to know why. I braced. And what did Vesper tell them? She told them you were fired for misconduct. The word hit like a slap. I didn't breathe for a second. "She said you mishandled sensitive compliance data," he continued, "and that your behavior posed a liability." I leaned forward, elbow on my knee, knuckles pressed to my temple. "That's career-ending." "That's the point," he said flatly. Then after a pause, "I think we should meet. Off the record." I stayed silent. My thoughts were moving faster than my heart. "There are things you need to see," he said. "I don't know who you can trust, but I know this much. Your name shouldn't be what gets buried in this." His voice didn't waver. That steadiness, unexpected from someone who barely knew me beyond a few professional calls, was the first thing all day that didn't feel like it was designed to control or manipulate me. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Where?" "There's a cafe on McGowan, 2 blocks from your place. I'll be in the corner." I didn't ask questions. I just grabbed my raincoat and an umbrella, shoved the external drive in my tote, and stepped out into the afternoon. The rain was steady now, not heavy, just enough to wash the streets in a soft shimmer. I kept my pace measured, even though adrenaline made me want to run. The clouds had thickened, making everything feel closer, heavier. The cafe was quiet. I spotted Alaric right away. He sat near the back, coat still on, a laptop closed in front of him. He looked like someone who'd been waiting longer than he admitted. "Thanks for coming," he said as I slid into the booth. I didn't respond. I just looked at him. He didn't waste time. He reached into his bag and pulled out a tablet. "This is the board's preliminary report," he said. "It's internal, not public, not yet." He turned it toward me. The document was full of corporate jargon, but I knew exactly what it was doing, constructing a narrative. According to it, I'd failed to flag key disclosures, neglected compliance training, even refused to cooperate with legal review. It painted me as negligent, arrogant, and borderline dangerous to the deal. I didn't say anything. I just kept reading. The anger hadn't hit yet. I was too stunned. The precision of it. The way it all looked reasonable on the surface. "She wrote this," I finally said. "Yes," Alaric replied, "and most of the board believes her. She moved quickly, got ahead of the story." I leaned back, trying to breathe past the tightness in my chest. "They're going to destroy me." He tapped the screen again. "This is why I reached out." He slid the tablet a few inches closer. Because there are inconsistencies, and you're not the only one who's noticed. I looked up. I've been tracking discrepancies in her documentation for weeks. At first, I thought they were clerical. Now I know better. The timestamps you received, they match issues I flagged internally but couldn't trace. I blinked. Someone else has been watching her? He nodded once. Quietly. They haven't come forward, but they're leaking things. To you, to me. Someone inside knows this isn't just about a personal feud. It's about covering up something that could sink the merger, or worse. I felt it then. The shift. The click in my gut that meant I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was processing. She didn't fire me because I messed up, I whispered. She fired me to stop me before anyone else could see what she did. Alaric's expression didn't change, but I could tell he agreed. The board believed her, for now, but that won't last if you can prove she tampered with compliance data. And if I can't? He paused. Then you'll be their scapegoat. My throat tightened. I looked down at the tile floor, then back at the door. Why are you helping me? Because I don't like being lied to, he said simply. And because if she's willing to manipulate this much, she's a risk to all of us. He leaned in, voice low. If she went this far to fire you, she'll go further to silence you. Be careful, Elira. She's not just playing office politics anymore. I nodded. For once, I didn't feel like I had to defend myself. Not to him. We sat in silence for a moment. The storm outside was growing darker, louder, lightning flashing somewhere behind the buildings. I stood, tightening my coat around me. He looked up. What will you do next? I took a breath. If she wants a war, she just started one. Outside, the air smelled like rain and pavement. My umbrella flipped in the wind as I stepped into the storm. Lightning cracked overhead as my phone buzzed again, this time with a message from my father. I stood under the awning just outside the cafe, my fingers trembling as I pressed play on the voicemail. The storm had eased into a steady drizzle, but inside me it was still thundering. My father's voice came through, steady, measured, and far too familiar in its cold efficiency. Elira, listen, this isn't the time to stir things up. We can't afford bad press. Please don't escalate this. Your aunt will resolve it in-house. That was it. No, how are you? No, are you okay? Just damage control. Company first, reputation first. I closed my eyes. I'd heard that tone since I was a girl, the one that said, keep it together, be quiet, don't make a scene. By the time I got back to my condo, the sky was dimming, dusk pressing through the windows like a heavy curtain. I tossed my damp coat over the kitchen chair and dropped onto the couch without even turning on the lights. The voicemail had knocked something loose in me, or maybe it had just confirmed what I'd known all along and tried for too long to deny. My chest felt hollow. My hands had gone cold. It wasn't the job I mourned. It was the final nail in something deeper. A lifetime of trying to earn the approval of a man who never truly saw me. Not outside of what I could do for the family name. The sob came out before I could stop it. Quiet, from someplace too deep to argue with. I pulled the throw blanket off the couch and tucked it around my shoulders, curling in like I could somehow protect the parts of me that were unraveling. My phone lit up again. Another message from him, this time a text. It's best if you apologize to Vesper. She acted in the company's interest. I stared at the screen. The breath I had left just emptied out. So that was it. Not just silence, but blame. He believed her. Maybe he always had. The heat rose in my face, but not from anger, not yet. It was the kind of heat that came from humiliation, from standing in a room where everyone's already decided who you are without asking. I let the phone fall to the cushion beside me. A memory flickered, clear, painful. A Thanksgiving dinner years ago. Vesper had spilled wine across the table, and before I could say a word, my father barked at me to stop being dramatic. She sat across from me, smirking behind her napkin, like she always did. Back then, I thought I was imagining the favoritism, that maybe I was being sensitive, but no, it had always been there. Hidden behind polite smiles and phrases like, "You're just emotional." The urge to give up pressed in hard. I imagined calling Alaric, telling him thank you, but I couldn't keep going. Let Vesper spin her story. Let them all believe what they wanted. I was tired of fighting for space in a family that had already decided I didn't matter as much. Tired of climbing through a system built to swallow people like me, quiet, careful, principled. But then, a soft ping broke the silence. Another message. No name, no subject line, just 2 words. Look at this. My heart pounded as I opened it. An image loaded, grainy, clearly from a security camera. There was Vesper, inside the compliance office. The timestamp showed it was nearly midnight, 2 days before the merger meeting. The same night she'd claimed she was out of office and hadn't touched any of the documents. She was alone, logged in, accessing records. I stared at the screen for a long time. This wasn't just ambition. This was deliberate, calculated. She hadn't just fired me to shut me up. She fired me to rewrite the record while I was gone. I said it aloud before I even realized I was speaking. If I walk away, she wins. And this keeps happening. It didn't come out angry. It came out clear. And with it came something I hadn't felt in days. Solid ground beneath me. They had counted on my silence, on the fact that I wouldn't cause waves. But silence wasn't grace. Not this time. I got up, turned on the lamp, and pulled out the files I'd been too raw to organize earlier. I opened my laptop, created folders, named them by date, sorted every screenshot, every email, every log file. Not for revenge, for defense, for truth. I didn't need to shout to fight. I just needed to be steady. The hours passed quietly. Outside, the storm finally gave way to a soft mist. I glanced at the wall where my badge used to hang, where I used to hang my sense of worth. But now I saw it differently. Losing that badge hadn't stripped me of value. It had just revealed who never saw it to begin with. Then my phone buzzed again, but this time the message wasn't from family, it was from HR. The subject line hit me like a slap. Immediate action required, misconduct review. I just sat there, blinking at the screen as the rain continued tapping at the window behind me. My coffee had long gone cold. My jaw clenched before I even realized I was grinding my teeth. I hadn't worked there in over 10 hours, and now they were summoning me like a criminal. The body of the email was even worse. Formal language, cold as steel. You are required to appear at headquarters within 2 hours to participate in an internal investigation related to compromised compliance documentation and obstruction of procedural audit trails. Compromised? Obstruction? They weren't just letting Vesper's lies stand. They were locking them in, making them policy. I scrolled to the bottom and found the attachment. 22 pages long. A report stamped with my name. I skimmed. Errors, missteps, incomplete files. Most of it, total fiction. And then, at the very end, in a small italicized note, provided by V. Hale. I sat back, closed my eyes. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an ambush. I could ignore it. Just walk away. But as quickly as the thought came, I shook it off. I thought of the anonymous files, the time-stamped logs, the grainy image of Vesper sneaking into the compliance office in the middle of the night. I whispered to no one, no more hiding, no more letting her rewrite my story. I stood up, grabbed the flash drive I'd prepared earlier, and slipped it into my coat pocket. Thunder rumbled in the distance. the kind that vibrates through your chest. The drive to Ravenshore felt surreal. The roads glistened under the rain, headlights smeared into streaks across my windshield. My wipers worked on low, rhythmic, and tired, like I felt. The closer I got, the more I remembered. Countless nights I stayed late under those fluorescent lights, obsessing over compliance logs so we wouldn't get hit with fines, or worse. I'd believed in what we were building, and now I was heading back, not to fix anything, but to defend myself. When I pulled into the parking garage, the storm had intensified. Water splashed under my tires and thunder cracked somewhere overhead. I parked in the far corner, away from the elevators, needing the extra few seconds to collect myself. I spotted them before they saw me. Vesper stood in front of the concrete support column, flanked by 2 HR managers I vaguely recognized, Marla from legal and Jason from personnel. All 3 were under the yellowish glow of the overhead lamp. Vesper's umbrella rested against her shoulder like she didn't have a care in the world. She spotted me and leaned toward Marla with a smug grin. "She won't fight this," she said, just loud enough. "She never does." Her voice had that same syrupy tone she used at family dinners when she was about to make a joke at my expense. But this time, something inside me didn't flinch. It hardened. Marla stepped forward. "Ms. Hale, thank you for coming on such short notice." I didn't respond. I was focused on Vesper, how relaxed she looked, how certain she was that I'd shrink the way I always had. Jason cleared his throat and joined in. "We've reviewed preliminary reports suggesting you intentionally altered key documents during the merger review process." Still, I didn't speak. For the first time in my life, my silence wasn't fear. It was composure. Then I reached into my coat, pulled out the USB drive, and handed it to Jason. "You'll want to review the real timestamps," I said calmly. "Every file I touched is accounted for and backed up with logs. That drive also contains internal video showing Vesper accessing files the night she said she didn't." The words hung in the air. Vesper's smirk didn't fully vanish, but it wobbled. Jason took the drive. Marla narrowed her eyes as if she didn't know whether to scold me or thank me. "Before this meeting goes any further," I added, "I suggest you verify everything on that drive. It'll speak louder than anything I could say." Vesper took a step toward me, her tone low but sharp. "You don't know who you're messing with." I finally looked her in the eye, and for the first time I saw fear behind all that performance. "I do now," I said, "and I'm done playing along." She blinked. Once, twice. Jason stepped away with the drive. Marla followed. Neither said a word. The air in the garage was heavy, wet, and thick with unspoken tension. And then, from behind us, a deep voice cut through the silence. "What exactly am I looking at here?" The voice came from behind us, steady and low, cutting through the echoing drip of rainwater off the ceiling. We all turned as Alaric stepped into the harsh overhead light, rain clinging to his coat, his gaze fixed on the group with a weight that shifted the entire energy of the room. HR froze mid-breath. Vesper stiffened beside me, her expression flickering, not quite panic, but close. Alaric's presence didn't shout. It commanded. He walked slowly toward us, not bothering to shake off the rain. His eyes landed on Jason, the younger HR manager, then flicked toward Marla. "This report," he said, lifting the USB drive I'd handed over moments before. "It claims Elira sabotaged the compliance logs. Who authorized this accusation?" Jason cleared his throat. We were following up based on materials submitted to us. It was filed under executive instruction." Alaric raised an eyebrow. "Executive instruction from whom?" There was a beat of silence before Jason answered, his voice tightening. "V. Hale." I felt more than saw Alaric shift his weight. His gaze moved sharply to Vesper. You submitted this under executive authority? Vesper didn't blink. I did. Someone had to move on this before it endangered the merger. We didn't have time to. You don't have that clearance, Alaric said flatly, not without board consensus. For the first time since this all began, her facade cracked, just slightly. Her lips pressed into a thin, pale line. Her shoulders squared, like she was about to charge forward out of pride alone. She's always been unstable, Vesper said, turning toward me. You know that. Alira hides things. She's emotional. She plays victim, and now she's trying to take me down with her. Her voice was rising, high-pitched and tight around the edges. I stood still. I'd heard that tone before. At birthday dinners, at holiday brunches, during meetings where my ideas suddenly became hers. It was the sound of Vesper building a story, not telling a truth. Alaric let the silence sit before answering. If Alira made a mistake, she'd own it. That's the difference. She understands the systems. You just manipulate them. That landed like a punch. Vesper's face froze for a beat, then her nostrils flared. I'm protecting this company, she snapped. I've been protecting it from her chaos for years. Alaric didn't even look at her. He turned to HR. We're not resolving this in a parking garage. Take us upstairs. Conference room B. Within minutes, we were walking silently through the empty halls, our wet shoes leaving streaks across the polished floor. The storm outside rattled the windows, thunder rolling in layers. Inside the conference room, the lights flickered once before stabilizing. Someone had left a pot of stale coffee on the side table. The room smelled like stress and old carpet. We all sat, except Alaric. He stood near the projector. Marla placed both sets of documents on the table. We've got 2 timelines, she said. One submitted this evening by Vesper Hale, one provided just now by Alira. Alaric nodded. Display both. Side by side, the inconsistencies lit up across the wall. Vesper's edits were sloppy, timestamps that didn't line up, files overwritten minutes apart by different IPs. Even HR, cautious and neutral by nature, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out the printed chain of command logs, sliding them across the table. These are the original pull logs. You'll see my activity stops 2 days before Vesper's so-called intervention. Cross-check them. Vesper leaned forward, snapping. Those are forged. She manipulates everything. She's had time to build whatever story she wants. But her voice cracked on the last word. Jason looked between us, clearly caught. Marla didn't move. Alaric's tone cut through the moment. Enough. We're not here for theatrics. We're here for facts. He stepped forward, pointing at the inconsistencies in Vesper's report. These edits weren't just unauthorized. They were clumsy, desperate. Vesper's shoulders sagged, but only for a second. She stood. Her voice trembled but gained pitch as she launched into something resembling a performance. She's trying to sabotage this merger. She wants to destroy me because I finally have the position she never could earn. She's always been jealous, always second place and bitter about it. Marla looked away. Jason fidgeted with his pen. No one responded. Then Alaric stepped between us. This isn't about position, he said calmly. It's about integrity. And only one of you has shown any. Vesper opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Alaric didn't take his eyes off her. The board will be notified tonight. My heart pounded, not out of fear, but because I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of Vesper, not of silence, not even of what came next. I looked at her, not triumphant, just steady. For the first time in years. And for the first time, Vesper didn't have a single word to throw back at me. Vesper didn't speak. Not a breath, not a glare, just silence. But the kind that wasn't in control anymore, the kind that had nowhere left to run. And then, everything broke loose. HR began talking at once, Marla trying to clarify something about protocol, Jason flipping through folders in a panic. Vesper's voice cut through, sharp and defensive. Alaric remained standing, hands behind his back, his face unreadable. Outside, thunder cracked so loudly the glass trembled. Inside, tension spun like a wire pulled taut. "Enough," Alaric said suddenly, and the room went still. He reached for the remote and clicked the monitor on the far wall. It glowed to life, momentarily flashing the company's logo before a video call connected. 3 board members filled the screen, each one dressed like they hadn't expected to be pulled into this at night, but alert enough to know something was wrong. "Evening," Alaric said. "We're invoking emergency review protocol. I have reason to believe a senior officer committed intentional misconduct that would have compromised the merger." Vesper went pale. "Now?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. The board chair, a silver-haired woman named Hargrove, spoke first. "We're listening." Vesper jumped in before Alaric could. "This is all a misunderstanding," she said, tone suddenly smoother, years of PR training kicking in. "There was a miscommunication, nothing malicious. Alira misunderstood my urgency around the merger timeline. She misinterpreted some internal processes." I didn't flinch, but my chest burned. That tone, that line. I'd heard it before at 16 when she explained away a lie she told about me. At 23 when she took credit for my proposal. And now again, cloaked in a fake grace meant to sound like reason. Alaric raised one hand. "Stop. This isn't misinterpretation. It's manipulation." He clicked again, and the screen split. On one side, a clean set of compliance logs, mine. On the other, the version Vesper submitted, filled with mismatched times and altered notes. The silence in the room got heavier. "That's not the version I meant to submit," Vesper said, then quickly added, "I was protecting the company. I didn't know she'd react this way." "This is deliberate," one of the board members muttered, and still I sat quietly. Until now. I stood, feeling the calm in my spine that only comes after you've let go of being afraid. "This isn't just about today," I said, keeping my voice steady. "For years, she's chipped away at my credibility, quietly, intentionally, because she knew I wouldn't fight, because that's how this place works. You keep your head down, and if you speak up, you're labeled difficult." Everyone looked at me now. The board chair leaned in. "Elira, if the merger had proceeded with the documents Vesper submitted, would we be liable?" "Yes," I answered. "You'd be exposed. Billions." Vesper's body jerked like she'd been hit, but no one came to her defense. Alaric's expression didn't change, but his next words did. "There's more." He reached down, clicked once more. A recorded phone call began to play. Vesper's voice echoed from the speaker. "Once she's out, no one will question my decisions again." The room didn't just fall quiet. It dropped into something colder. Vesper sagged into her chair, her hand covering her mouth. Her eyes darted to the screen, to Alaric, to me, nowhere to hide. The board chair exhaled slowly. "Vesper Hale, your conduct is grounds for immediate removal. HR, begin the termination process." Marla stood. Jason moved toward the paperwork. Vesper bolted upright, rage replacing the panic. "You think she's better than me? You think she's the victim here? She's nothing without this company. She was always just a shadow in the background." I stepped forward then, not to argue, not to match her volume, but to speak plainly. "I was something before you ever tried to erase me." Her eyes widened. There was nothing else left for her to say. Security arrived minutes later. As they led her toward the door, she turned back, sending me one last hateful look. But it didn't land. For once, It bounced off like nothing. I turned to the window. The storm was finally easing, rain thinning, clouds shifting. And in the sudden quiet, the board chair said the last thing I ever expected. "Elira, what do you want to do now?" The question hung in the room like fog refusing to lift. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch, not because I was unsure, but because I finally had the space to breathe before I spoke. For once, no one was rushing to speak over me, to decide for me, to box me into a corner I didn't build. I looked at each face in the room. The board, HR, Alaric. The empty chair where Vesper had sat, still slightly pulled back like she'd meant to run and never got the chance. "I don't want her title," I said quietly. "I don't want to wear the crown she nearly destroyed this company chasing after." There was a pause. A flicker of confusion passed between the board members. "What I want," I continued, "is for the record to be set straight. I want the truth documented. I want the merger handled the right way, and I want it to be safe. Not dramatic, just clear." They exchanged glances again, and this time something else passed between them. Respect. Not applause, not overblown praise. Just a nod to what mattered. "We'd like to offer you a temporary reinstatement," Chairwoman Hargrove said. "Senior strategic advisor to complete the compliance review. Discreetly. No press, no pageantry." I nodded. That works. It was done without handshakes, no photo ops, no elevator speeches. And maybe that's why it felt real. I left the conference room with Alaric trailing a few steps behind. The building had gone quiet. Stormlight through the windows had softened, the sky bleeding from charcoal into steel blue. When I reached the elevator, the doors opened to reveal someone I hadn't expected to see. My father. He stood there stiffly, coat damp at the collar, eyes red around the edges like he'd been up all night, and hadn't planned to be here at all. We both paused. Then silently, I stepped in. He didn't move or speak until the doors closed. "I didn't know," he said after a long beat. "She told me you didn't want responsibility, that you'd stepped away." The ache that stirred in me wasn't sharp anymore. It was dull, like touching the scar instead of the wound. "She told you what you wanted to hear," I said, keeping my eyes forward. He shifted, fumbled with his watch. "I should have asked you. I should have known better than to let someone else fill in your silence." I turned to him then, not unkindly. "There's no point rewriting what's already been lived, just don't repeat it." He nodded. That was all. No hug, no breakdown. But maybe, for a man like him, that was a start. When the elevator landed on the lobby floor, we stepped out together. A security guard waved us down, holding a sealed cardboard box. "Ms. Hale, these were cleared from Vesper's desk, company protocol." He handed it to me, taped shut, impersonal. But one corner of the lid had peeled slightly, revealing the edge of a navy binder. The same one she'd slammed into my chest the morning I got fired, lifted it gently. This time, it didn't feel like weight. It felt like a thing, just paper and plastic and ink. Nothing more. I turned to the HR assistant near the reception desk. "Archive it," I said, handing the whole box over. "None of that fear belongs to me anymore." Outside, the air smelled of rain and morning. A faint breeze moved across the lot, and the first edge of sunrise slipped across the building's long glass face. Alaric stood at the top of the front steps, coffee in hand. "You handled that with more grace than anyone in that room deserved," he said. I shrugged, a small smile playing at the corner of my mouth. "I didn't do it for them." "No," I shook my head. "I did it so I could finally stop being small." His face softened. "Well, you're not even close." We stood there in the quiet together, no more words needed. After a moment, I turned to look back at the building. The glass no longer gleamed like something unreachable. It just sat there, steel and stone and stories. Funny, I thought, how something can shrink the moment you stop begging it to love you. I turned, walked toward my car, and for the first time in my life, walking away didn't feel like losing, just finally choosing myself.